Holy shit, stream. It's Monday, a Monday evening to be exact. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic today. Hi, hello, and welcome. It has been some time since I last saw you all in my imaginary audience. I took a bit of a break. I did. After the last stream that we did, it was so incredible, so amazing, so energy consumption. That's not a word, but part of it was, yes, that I felt like the last stream that we had, I put so much of my heart and soul in it that I felt a bit, empty. I was out of fuel, to say the least. But the main reason why it's been a while, but it's been about, I think, a week and a half, right? Because the last stream we did was not last Thursday, but Thursday before that. So yeah, about a week and a half. But the main reason that I ended up taking a break is because pretty much all of last week and the weekend before, as well as this most recent weekend, I pretty much had a significant portion of my day blocked out for different reasons. So on the weekends, I had plans, as people do. We make plans, and just was pretty busy on the weekends. And didn't really feel like streaming before or after the plans, just because I felt like I would be inattentive to the stream, and uh, and sorry, just got a Discord message, and I thought it was showing up on stream, but it didn't. How do I stream again? I feel like I feel like I have all this energy and I'm excited to be back, but I keep forgetting how to talk and I keep getting tongue tied. But effectively, what happened was on both weekends I had plans, and streaming before or after the plans just didn't feel right to me. Didn't feel like I would have the motivation to properly stream, so didn't do so. But last week at work, and this is probably the first week that I took off that really felt like it was out of my control, because most of my evenings at work last week were blocked off. So I worked the regular 9 to 5 that I usually do, but then there was an extra bit of work that I had to be on call for, even after 5 o'clock, and it was usually pretty long, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. And so and it usually wasn't right after 5. It usually was like an hour after 5, starting at 6 or something like that. So it felt really difficult to stream last week, during the weekdays, because it was like, well, if I am going to stream, it has to be pretty damn late, because I'm not getting off work till like at the minimum 8 or 8:30, and from there just didn't feel like I had the energy to do so, or it was going to be too short of a stream, or some reasonable reason as a result of that extra bit of work in the evening. So eventually, as the days went by, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna take a bit of a break, and I'm gonna come back when I feel comfortable. So yeah, there we go. But today we're gonna be doing the story discussion slash recap that we always do for 3.3, which was the last stream that we had, and it was absolutely incredible. I'm super excited to finally be able to sit down and really gush about 3.3, because a lot of people have been talking about it online, and how incredible it was, and for good reason, because it truly was a magical experience. And I'm going to take the opportunity for for this one to kind of try out a different format for the story discussion, because usually what we do, or in the past what we've done, is we've pulled up the story, or the story that we played through, on YouTube, and we kind of go through it in chronological order. We talk about the events that happened, we talk about what we really liked, any observations that we had, any theories, etc., right? And I've enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong; it's been super fun that way. But for Star Rail, I find that that method doesn't ultimately work that well, because I have some tea. Respect the beard. Because the Star Rail story is so freaking long, and what ends up happening instead is we just kind of recap the story, just kind of like robotically. for 2.5 to 3.5 hours. And that's not what I want to do with the Star Rail story. I don't want to just sit here for that, you know, length of time and just simply regurgitate something that you guys have likely already experienced. Because I imagine most of you in my imaginary audience who are going to be watching this, you guys are watching this because you have already played through the story and you want, to share the experience with someone, or you want to relive that magic, etc. You don't need me to sit here and kind of tell you what happened again and just give my own 2 cents as I'm doing so, right? Instead, what I would like to do is I would like to really just start from what's in my mind and kind of go through, just give my thoughts, give my opinions, and if we need to reference any scene or any screenshot or anything from the YouTube video, we can, and we can even go through chronologically to a certain extent. But I really just want to start talking. I really just want to kind of get it out, get my thoughts out there, kind of, and then from there, I think the discussion will start to to take form and to take shape. I don't want to just have this 3.3 story video in front of me and just kind of go through from start to finish. It's a murder on my voice because I'm talking for like 2.5 and 3.5 hours straight. And simply put, I just don't think it's a great way to really. I just don't think it's an effective or efficient or great way to bring honor to the story. I guess it just kind of feels like I'm just robotically like an AI just repeating back to the story um, to you guys in cliff notes while just giving my opinions every once in a while. So we'll see if this new format sticks or not. We'll give it a try for this one. If it works, then it works, and we'll keep doing it for everything after. And if it doesn't work, then with 3.4, we'll go right back. So we got some tea. We're ready. And we're ready to go. So I anticipate the stream being about an hour and a half. That's about as much as I want to talk about the story. Maybe a little bit longer, depending on how deep we get into it. But before we jump in, a lot of housekeeping items, of course, because it's been a week and a half. The first one is next stream is going to be tomorrow, because tomorrow we have Zenless Zone Zero's anniversary, I think. No, the anniversary already happened, right? But like the official anniversary patch, which is going to be Zenless 2.0, comes out tomorrow, and Yixuan comes out tomorrow. And we are summoning for Yixuan because she's hot as fuck and she's also cool as fuck. So we're going to be summoning for her tomorrow night as soon as it goes live, so you guys can expect me there. I'm not going to be going through and doing like a whole, evening stream. We're just going to be summoning for her, maybe play, using her a little bit, getting her leveled up. That's all we're going to be doing. But so we're going to be having a double stream back to back. So today and tomorrow. So today, story recap. Tomorrow, Ishwen summoning session. Should be about, and again, pretty similar to what we're going to be having today, an hour and a half, give or take. And then after that, we have a decent amount of time, even after the break we took. We still have like 4 weeks or so to just really grind out Zenless. I've been still really wanting to play, so we're just gonna start streaming again. We're gonna start from where we left off, and we're gonna just grind it out. We're gonna do as much story as we can, as many commissions as we can, level up our characters, try to get as far as possible, and catch up to where the game is at right now. And that's gonna be pretty much the future of this channel until we do catch up. It's just gonna be Zenless Zone Zero, and then every once in a while we're gonna have a summoning session in Zenless or Star Rail or a story, playthrough in Star Rail when those come out. And then once we finish with those, we'll go right back to Zenless, catching up, and that's pretty much what's the plan for the foreseeable future. In terms of what comes after, I'm not sure yet. I have a couple of ideas in my mind, but right now I'm pretty much fully focused on the gachas and just catching up to Zenless. So that's the main housekeeping item, number one. Number two, audio quality is we were experimenting with some new audio settings before I ended up taking the break. And I really do think they're a bit better than what we had before. So we're going to stick with it. That said, I'm growing increasingly frustrated with the audio quality of my stream. It's not just the fact that I think the audio mixing sometimes can be a bit off. I've learned and I've definitely gotten it better with time, but really it's just the mic quality. And I think I've realized that it's a combination of different things. It's the room that I'm in. I don't think it's a great room for streaming, but it's the room that we got, so we have to make do. But more importantly, I move my head a lot when I'm streaming like this. You know, I'm just moving my head to the side like this. Sometimes I'm straight. I'm staring straight forward. Sometimes I'm leaning back. Sometimes I'm leaning forward, and I push forward the mic. Yeah. And I've realized that the microphone that I have, this one right here, it's a good microphone. It's a Samsung Q2U. It's one of the most recommended budget microphones for streaming. But I've realized that this microphone, despite being a quality microphone, doesn't really match very well uh, to my needs. And the audio quality also isn't exactly, I think, up to par with what I would want from my stream. So I've said this before that I didn't want to really upgrade any of my, streaming setup, any of my streaming equipment until I was very fully confident that I would be streaming for, a long time, that this wasn't just a temporary thing, a temporary passion, a momentary hobby. And I'm still not quite sure whether or not uh where that is. There are some days where I feel like, you know what, streaming is really fun and I really, really enjoy it. But I would like to take an extended break and see if it's, something that I could leave behind. And there are other days where I'm just like, how could I ever get this up? This is one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Like the last stream that we did when we were streaming Star Rail 3.3. That was amazing. It was an incredible stream and I had such a great time with it. And so right now, I'm leaning more towards that, thankfully, which is good news for I would anticipate most of my imaginary audience. I'm leaning more towards this being a permanent thing in my life, streaming being a big, carve out of my time. And so, because of that, I'm considering upgrading my streaming setup. And we'll see. You know, I if I were to upgrade my streaming setup, I would get the very best of the best, and that is a lot of money to spend. The very best microphone, the very best webcams, the very best lighting. This would be like the one upgrade I would make to my streaming setup, and then that would be it. But like I said, doing so would be a lot of money, so I'm still kind of on the fence. But yeah, so essentially, long story short, housekeeping item number two is audio quality continues to improve marginally, but I'm thinking about making some major improvements here by just completely upgrading my stream setup. So, and then housekeeping item number three, which is a thank you to everyone in my real audience or imaginary audience, because the YouTube VOD for the last stream that we did, Star Rail 3.3, well, Star Rail 3.3 Part 2, because we divided our 3.3 playthrough into two parts, has over 1,000 views on YouTube. That is crazy, dude. I cannot imagine over 1,000 people clicking on my stream. That is insane. And it has what has been really great about it is the fact that more and more people are leaving comments in the YouTube section and being able to discuss with those people. Or if you're someone in the future who's watching this who has commented on my videos before, being able to discuss with you about the story, about the characters, about any theories that we might have in Star Rail is why I do this. It is such a joy. It is so fun, and it's the reason why I stream, to be able to interact with you all and share our love and passion for the game and the story behind the game. And it just really was amazing to see that 1,000 people decided to share, my experience with theirs, with their own, and yeah, just really cool. But okay, so we're gonna use the CG Inferno video as a reference, as we always do. So let me pull it up. There we go. And we'll get started. Okay, so I'm just gonna have this open as oh, this is the wrong overlay. We are not playing, but we are watching videos. Okay, so this is um this is gonna be up here mostly for a visual, but like I was speaking to before, what we used to do is we used to just go through from start to finish the entire story, and I would just kind of talk about it, recap it, and then give my thoughts every now. We're not gonna do that this time. Instead, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna start talking. We're gonna see where the conversation slash discussion takes us, and then if we have to reference anything within the story, then I'll go there, and I will, showcase it as a visual. So the very first thing that I want to talk about, we'll just pick a random. There we go. That's a perfect kind of like image to stay on. The very first thing that I want to talk about is how high quality the story patch was. A lot of people have rightfully praised 3.3 for being amazing, and so have I. Of course, I think I have some hiccups. Okay, I think we're good. Let me take a swig of tea, if you will. We can start over. So, like I was saying, 3.3 has been widely praised by the Star Rail community and the Star Rail player base as one of the best story patches in the entire game. And I fully agree. I think this is the best story patch that we've had in the game since Penacony 2.2, the story patch where you fight Sunday, right? Pretty much the climax of Penacony. And the only other Honkai Star Rail version that comes close, I think, to those two is, you know, version launch 1.0, where you had all of the Bellabok story. So really, to me, it's those three in at the very top, with 2.2 and 3.3 being the clear 1 and 2 ahead of 1.0. And I think the reason why it is so incredible to me isn't just because of the actual events that happen within the story, right? Because there are so many incredible story story events that happen. The Akala boss fight, I think, is potentially the best boss fight in the game. It's either that or Sunday, pick your poison. Then Aglaya's death was really well done. Anything with Finon in this story patch was amazing. Hyacinth's basically journey of discovery of the true history of her ancestry. The finale, the final part of Amphorius with the kind of Kefli's protection going away because of Cypher's death, which also I can't believe I forgot to mention that. Cypher and her backstory with Aglaya and her eventual confrontation with the Flame Reaver and her eventual death as well, and then how that leads to kind of the apocalypse within Amphorius and basically rushing towards the vortex of Genesis with Finon and seeing everyone basically put down their lives to make sure that Finon gets there. And then the actual last scene with Finon, Lygus, and Cyrene. I mean, just so many incredible story events that they've been building up for in a long period of time, right? But even it isn't just that for me. I genuinely think that this might be the most well put together story patch that we have in the game. Maybe 1.0 is more well organized or more well put together, but even then I think it's pretty close between the two of them. Because so in my opinion, the best story patch in Penacony and in Star Rail overall is 2.2. And it is my favorite, story that Star Rail has put out. It is I prefer it over 3.3. I prefer it over 1.1. I think a lot of people fell in love with Penacony the way I did. But the reason I fell in love with Penacony and specifically 2.2 so much wasn't necessarily the execution of the story, though the execution was very good, in my opinion. I thought it was just the ideas, right? The characters, the way they had written the characters in Penacony, how colorful and likable they were. It just Penacony had this magic, this kind of like, magic in a bottle that I don't think Star Rail has ever really been able to replicate until just now with 3.3. But that's the reason I fell in love with Penacony. It was something that I could hardly describe to you. Whereas with 3.3, I feel like not only did you have, I think, really great ideas and likable characters and, build up that has been, you know, build up that has been worked on for almost three story patches now, right? 3.0, 3.1, 3.2, yeah. But it also felt just seamless. The voice acting, the camera work, the direction of the story, the plot development, the actual story ideas that they decided to, showcase within the customer experience, the music, um, everything to me felt like it had its place, it had its purpose, and it didn't ever feel like it intruded on the other aspects of the story. And the reason I want to bring that up is because I feel like Star Rail sometimes has an issue with that, where sometimes, I'm playing through a story patch or a version, a story version, and I feel like the dialogue is a bit too much, right? That it's overshadowing some of the, you know, more subtle character moments within the story. Or sometimes I feel like the lore in the story is being expanded on a bit too much. It's being a bit convoluted and it's taking away from the simplistic character moments that we really enjoy sometimes seeing in the game. Or sometimes I feel like the music is kind of over the top, that it's too much during a scene, and I would prefer either silence or something a bit more, you know, humble and quiet or reserved. But you guys get what I'm saying, is that sometimes Star Rail feels like not necessarily a sum of the parts, but just a collection of just really high quality production. And for me, most of the time, that's perfectly fine because I just love every part of Star Rail. And even if the all the different moving parts of the Star Rail story don't necessarily connect to each other all that well, I'm still going to love it because I love everything about, said parts. But ideally, I would want a story patch and I would want the story to be presented to me where each part, right? Music, the voice acting, dialogue, the lore, the actual story ideas that they're using, that all of them are able to basically work in collaboration with each other and create a sum that is greater than the parts, you know? And I really feel that 3.3 got it right. I felt at all times that I was playing 3.3, this makes sense. Okay, now this really feels right. I just kind of felt like everything was interconnected so well executed. And I think a big reason for that, and let me know in my imaginary audience if you guys agree. I think a big reason that Star Rail story can sometimes feel a bit disconnected is simply because there isn't a lot of time, right? They have to churn out these stories 6 weeks at a time, give or take, because of the way the story patches work, the way the version patches work. And so I do think I read somewhere that the Star Rail team has, begun planning their story almost a year in advance. But when you actually get into the game and start developing it, putting the actual work into tangible visual aspects, it can be a bit difficult to kind of get a handle on it. And I don't think 6 weeks is a healthy amount of time to be able to really execute everything perfectly. But for whatever reason, this time it was. This time it absolutely was. 3.3 really feels like a great execution of everything that Star Rail has going for it. And that's, I think, the main reason why is it has been so well received. This is my second cup of tea. I had one before I started streaming, and I'm having another one. It's hitting different. But yeah, so that's the first thing. I just want to basically I just rambled on for a very long time about how I feel 3.3 was just executed really well by the Star Rail team. I could have just said that one sentence and you guys would have been like, yep, okay, I agree. But the next thing I want to talk about is holy shit. Can we get there? Let's go there for right now, right? No, here we go. Uh, 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 no, no, no. Yeah, this bullshit right here. Let's get the chat out of the way. Okay, maybe we go. Perfect. There we go. This shit was absolutely insane. Are you kidding me, man? Holy fuck. Star Rail knows how to do its final bosses. And even the bosses that are not, quote unquote, final bosses are still really awesome. Like Nikador, right? For Amphorius was absolutely incredible. And in Penacony, I really felt adventuring was really fun as well. And in Bellabog, well, does Bellabog really have one? Bellabog doesn't really have one. But you get what I mean. Like Star Rail does bosses well, but they're like ultimate, final bosses that are typically a part of a climax, like Sunday, like Cocolia, like Aquila. Holy shit, do they know how to make it the hypest thing on the planet? Because this was a solid, for me, like a solid 10 to 20 minutes of just pure adrenaline, right? From the moment Hyacinth, activates the core flame and the cutscene starts and the music starts to play till the very last white screen after, the Trailblazer and Finon are able to defeat Aquila, it is just ecstasy. It was so fucking good. And honestly, this is what Star Rail is all about. It's these magical moments that, and it's not necessarily always boss fights, right? You have moments in Star Rail that are just as magical as these boss fights that may not be as action focused, right? To me, one that immediately comes to mind is potentially my favorite scene in the game is Firefly's kind of rooftop scene. A lot of people fell in love with Firefly from that scene alone, including myself. And just there's every once in a while Star Rail finds this moment in the story that it realizes, okay, this is something special. Let's really capitalize on it, right? And man, they really did so here. I mean, just what a spectacle. I mean, the design of Aquila is amazing, right? It's a three-phase fight. I think the only thing that I would kind of criticize is the fight is a bit too short. It's a bit too easy, especially if you have Castris. If you have Castris, this fight is a walk in the park. But maybe if you don't have Castris, it was a bit more difficult for you and you were able to experience it a little bit longer. But especially phase three, once the OST starts kicking in, it does kind of feel like you finish the fight extremely quickly. I remember on stream, I even said, I'm going to try to only use basic attacks to elongate this boss fight as much as possible. And even then, I think we finished it like super quickly. But yeah, I mean, what a spectacle. The the voice acting, Finon's voice actor, Joshua Waters, right? I believe that's his name. Was absolutely incredible here. He was absolutely incredible whole story patch. Like there are some moments in this story patch where Finon is really aggressive. A lot of people have pointed it out, and we'll talk about that later. But there's also some moments where he's really vulnerable, like really emotional. And Joshua Waters really sells it in the story patch. You can kind of tell the voice direction basically gave him a lot of freedom to take Finon's character in this patch the way the voice actor thought Finon should go. So yeah, but the Finon's voice acting here, Hyacinth being an absolute badass, just she wasn't just such a anchor for the cast of Amphorius this entire story patch, right? She was so kind, so optimistic, and whenever she had to step up to the plate, right, when the fate of the world was, in her hands, she succeeded. She, is supposedly a healer. That's her main thing, right? She's a healer, but she was in combat, direct combat against Aquila, and she was one of the main forces against Aquila. There was the laser beam clash that she won, right? There's the core flame awakening that she was able to pull off. Like, truly, Hyacinth felt like a Chrysos heir. She felt like a hero, and up until now, I felt that Hyacinth, she was a Chrysos heir, but I was still waiting for her presence in the story to really announce itself. And what a way to announce it, in against Aquila in this boss fight right here. And then just the OST Proi Proi. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's spelled Proi with a space in between. Proi Proi, incredible OST, and of course the animation of the cutscenes were gorgeous, and the fight itself, the background, the backdrop of everything, also gorgeous. I mean, truly one of the peak Star Rail moments. There's not much. There's not much better. There's not much better you can do here, right? So yeah, that's the first thing I wanted to talk about because every time I think about Star Rail, uh, boss fights, in the past, every time I would think about Star Rail, I would think about the boss fights in the past. I would think about Sunday. I would think about Cocolia. And now I'm gonna think about Aquila because this was just an incredible moment that had me rocking in and out of my chair. You can go watch back the VOD. It's on YouTube. So yeah. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. And I think the second thing that I wanted to talk about was something that I already kind of hinted at while we were kind of raving about the boss fight. Let's find the image where Flynon is kind of like communing with. Yeah, here we go. Now let's make sure that everyone's in there. There we go. I think it's kind of weird that the dialogue is cut off. Hold on. Can I kind of fast forward like this? Yeah, perfect. I think, to me, this might be this might be. I'm not guaranteeing anything. The best voice acting performance in the game in a single story patch so far. It's close, right? I think when you think of the best voice acting performances in Star Rail, you think of Firefly 1.0, right? Not Firefly 1.0, Firefly 2.0, right? Because Firefly 2.0 was a voice acting performance that, if it almost essentially, with the other reasons why lots of people love Firefly, but Annalisa Fisher's performance as Firefly 2.0 was one of the most main reasons why so many people fell in love with Firefly, to the point to where she's arguably Star Rail's most popular character, right? Like, Firefly's voice acting performance at 2.0, specifically the rooftop scene, is incredible. The other one that I think of is almost directly after Aventurine in 2.1, right? Aventurine 2.1, absolutely incredible. Camden's performance is something that is talked about still to this day. I think Joshua Waters has an equally great performance in this story patch. His aggression and almost like teetering on violent, like let's play. I'm gonna actually play a little bit of the voice acting here, so you guys can hear what I'm talking about. Um, and then I'm gonna play a different clip from the Aquila fight. And let's make sure I don't blast her ears off.
So much. Maybe not as cute, but
So that's good. Let me check audio.
Time spares no one, so there's nothing we can do. But kindness, you helped nurture it in me.
Don't mention it.
You guys hear how soft and emotional he is? How it kind of feels like he's doing everything he can to keep it together. But at the same time, there's this level of resolve. Like, it is genuinely amazing, vulnerable voice acting. And then you go to the Aquila boss fight. Probably should have stayed there. Uh, 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 I saw fine on doing fine on things. Here we go. Listen to this.
The first and only god that Dawnmaker will slay is you.
Bro, how is he able to do both? How is he able to go to the from this like soft, almost weak, yet also strong, resolute voice to this almost like violent, aggressive, desperate growl? Joshua Waters and a lot of people have been saying that that the voice actor for Final cooked in the story patch, and absolutely, he cooked. He cooked a Michelin star meal in this story patch, and it isn't just Finon. I felt that everyone in this story patch, the other one of true like real significance, I felt was Aglaya. Aglaya's voice actor has always been really strong. I think she is more consistent, right? Her voice isn't gonna fluctuate, isn't gonna fluctuate the way Finon's has. But man, I mean, Finon's voice actor, what a performance! Same with Aglaya here, because this is the first time you've really seen real vulnerability from Aglaya in the story, with her backstory with Cypher and everything. Castris had a couple of really nice moments with the flashbacks as well, and the other one obviously being um, the other standout performance, Cypher. I mean, Cypher has probably had, well, it's close between her and Finon, but Cypher has probably had the best voice acting performance so far in Inforious overall. Like, it's either her or Finon. Finon being hard carried by the most recent patch, but even before 3.3, Finon was also really really good. But I felt like before 3.3, he wasn't as far ahead of everyone else, and I feel like he is now. But Cypher, wow, holy shit! And something I heard that Cypher's voice actor before this role wasn't that well known. That this is one of her first really like key standout roles that she's had within the voice acting sphere, at least for video games. And maybe she has a portfolio of work elsewhere in acting, or maybe anime, or who knows, right? But from the moment Cypher was introduced, everyone has said, yeah, she has an amazing voice actor, and that is true. When she was introduced 3.2, right? So she hasn't even been in the story for too long. She's been in the story for 2 story patches, and she was great in 3.2, and she is once again phenomenal in 3.3. Because I mean, I always just think back to this, to this right here. Her like cat and mouse game with the Flame Reaver. Oh, oh, great. Why did this load here? Oh, because I was listening to Castris's giggle. Do you guys want to hear the most adorable thing in the world? Most adorable thing in the world. Here we go.
Here, mutt.
Damn, Mutt. All right, tell him how you really feel, Cypher. Um, this whole scene, this whole kind of like cat and mouse chase with Cypher and the Flame Reaver is just a perfect example of why her voice actor is so great. It is so almost energy. It is so like wild and energetic. She has such this crazy range of fluctuation in each one of her lines. The way she laughs, the way her kind of like intonation is able to kind of go up and down and up and down. Like, Cypher's voice actor is immensely talented, especially if kind of that thing that I saw that said that this is one of the first roles that Cypher's voice actor has had just in her career period. If that is true, like, and she doesn't have that much experience, for this to be one of the first, you know, performances that she puts out, god damn, well done. Because it truly is really, really strong. So that was really the second thing. I knew I knew that I wanted to talk about Aquila first and the voice acting second. Because that those are the two main things that I think about when I think about 3.3 is how hype I was during the boss fight and how just incredible and enrapturing the voice acting was. Enrapturing is a weird word, but that's the one that I used. The next thing I want to talk about, I think, is Cypher and Aglaya. What's a good visual that we can kind of like, yeah, here we go, perfect. I didn't expect, and I was actually really disappointed for a while. Not really disappointed, but I was a bit sad because a lot of you in my imaginary audience might remember that going into Inforius, and really it was around the time that I started streaming, like 6 months ago. 6 months ago? Oh my god. A little over 6 months ago, actually. But a little over 6 months ago, when I first started streaming, one of the very first things we did on stream was react to the Inforius trailers. Inforius 3.0 had not come out yet. The only thing we had was the Inforius trailers that they released up to the launch of 3.0. And so that was one of the very first things that we did on stream was react to the trailers that had been released. And I remember before reacting to those trailers on stream, I didn't think much about Aglaya. I thought she was pretty. I really liked her design. But beyond that, there wasn't really anything that I was interested in. I just thought she was, a fine character that I probably wasn't going to summon for. And then after watching the trailers, I was pretty much all in on Aglaya being my favorite character in Inforius because the trailers had kind of like, in my opinion, and maybe I read into it a bit too much, the trailers had kind of teased or suggested that Aglaya was going to be kind of this mature, influential, and powerful woman figure in the story that was going to serve as a mentor for the rest of the Crisis heirs. But at the same time, you know, seemingly was very fragile and, you know, secretly vulnerable and weak and, on the inside, right? With her emotions. And that is an archetype of character that I absolutely eat up. I love the characters, and they don't necessarily have to be female, but you know, um that's something that a lot of the archetype really focuses on. But I love characters that present themselves as, you know, or don't necessarily present themselves. Characters that just genuinely are, on the surface, very confident, very steady and composed and mature. And, there's a lot of strengths to them. But as the story develops, those same characters, they become, as the pressure builds, right? As their, the weight on their shoulders grows heavier and heavier, they start to show vulnerability. They start to show weakness and emotion that has been underneath the surface for a very long time. And I love those type of characters. And to me, Aglaya seemed to be the perfect kind of archetype of that character, based on from what I was seeing in the trailers. Also, I just realized my webcam is tilted. That's kind of weird. Let me. There we go. Well, no, not quite. Actually, I just moved it. All right, whatever. So, yeah, but going into Inforius, once I started playing the story, I felt like Aglaya's character was living up to my expectations, but not as much as I would have liked. Aglaya is instead presented in Inforius as, the very composed, mature, powerful, influential leader, mentor figure of the Crisis heirs who, has been protecting Akama and the people of Amphorius for centuries, essentially. And even though you could tell there was some vulnerability, beneath the surface, it wasn't really being explored, unfortunately. And instead, the angle that the writers tried to take with Aglaya was that her vulnerability, her humanity, her emotion was fading. It was kind of eroding with time because of her divinity. And that's another interesting angle to take, absolutely. But I was a bit sad because I was hoping for them to explore Aglaya's, internal turmoil, if she had any, slightly more. I really wanted to see this character kind of expanded a bit, I think. Because with Mighty and Finan and hell, even Chibi, right? Who was Aglaya's mentor. We got such great character depth from them. We got such we got focus on their characters beyond what we saw on the surface. We got to see their internal thoughts and turmoil and conflicts and see how they would grow out of them, right? In some cases, like Mighty, or had grown to accept, their internal turmoil, like with Triby, or had, been unable to move past it, like with Finan. And I wanted to see that same effort put into Aglaya. But after 3.1 kind of concluded, I started to lose a bit of hope that they were going to do so. I thought they were going to keep Aglaya as kind of the like strong, independent, focused leader who was just slowly losing her humanity. And 3.2 seemed to support that a bit more. Um, there were a few moments of vulnerability in 3.2, but not what I was looking for in terms of like of Aglaya's character. So I was a bit sad. I felt that there was like so much more potential to Aglaya's character that wasn't being explored, and I didn't think we were ever going to see it because I thought her time in the spotlight had mostly dissipated until this story patch. And holy shit, if it wasn't for Finan and Cypher, Aglaya might be, in my opinion, my favorite character in this story patch. Well, actually, Hyacinth exists, so maybe not. This story patch is so good that there are like 4 or 5 characters that you could genuinely say is the star of the show in the story patch. But Aglaya, this is what I was craving from Aglaya's character. Everything with Cypher and the backstory that we see with Cypher and Aglaya, and the brief mentions of Hycelins and how Aglaya's quote unquote failure led to her death, and seeing how Aglaya tried to kind of take care of Cypher and to give her, a place where she belongs and kind of maintain that friendship, um or something even more depending on how you see it. And eventually, and also seeing how that dynamic between Cypher and Aglaya eventually broke apart, and getting to see Aglaya's genuine reaction to that was just so well done. I mean, this scene is great for Cypher, right here. This is more of a Cypher focus scene, but it does a lot for Aglaya's character, in my opinion. Even though, and a lot of people have said this, and I agree with this. This isn't Aglaya or like a vision of Aglaya or a dream of Aglaya. This is, I think, Cypher lying to herself and manifesting, an illusion of Aglaya because she wants to believe so badly that Aglaya was there to comfort her in her dying moments. Because there's this bug that gets shown. I wonder if I can find it. Right there, right? This bug seems to be kind of a envoy for Aglaya in a certain way, or like a familiar, right? At first, this bug is gold, which suggests that it is Aglaya. But when Cypher dies, there we go. You see, this bug actually was not gold. It's red, like just any regular bug. So a lot of people have said, and correctly, I think, determined that Aglaya, her spirit, her soul, she never once showed up. What Cypher was seeing was, her own power, her ability to kind of create or manifest reality by telling a lie. Cypher was lying to herself. So I think that's a really powerful message, a really powerful scene for Cypher. But I think it would also added a lot to Aglaya's character as well. But the main thing was these flashback scenes with Cypher and Aglaya. Also really well done. But yeah, so the scene with her and Cartonis is great as well. Yeah, but here we go. This conversation between Aglaya and Cypher, what is really what I'm talking about. Kind of Aglaya pretty much knowing that she is about to die and using her final moments to act on the last bit of freedom and autonomy she might have because she's going to die, right? To reach out to Cypher and share her inner feelings, share her inner thoughts, no ulterior motives, nothing here but just genuine, humanity was really powerful for me. I really enjoyed Aglaya and the story in 3.3. And a big reason for that was just how well I think her character works with Cypher and how well Cypher's character works with Aglaya. They have a lot of really good natural chemistry. But even then, just the scenes with just Aglaya on her own, like with her confrontation with kindness, I felt this was really strong as well. And also the message that she leaves behind for Finon, I thought was really emotional as well. It's just not there. Uh, well, yeah, here we go. She speaks with Finon. She's the last one that speaks with Finon. Everyone leaves besides so Anaxa leaves, Castris leaves, Tribi leaves. Aglaya is the last one to speak with Finon, except for Mighty. Mighty shows up at the very end because you know they're brothers, rivals, or gay lovers. You know, or all all three maybe. But also the kind of last message that she leaves for Finon was also really good. And that scene that she has with him. Here we go. Like yeah, this scene right here. Like it really felt like they finally had the opportunity to expand on Aglaya's character because the rest of the Crisis heirs had already been developed. You know what I mean? It felt like okay, well shit. You know, we have to develop Mighty, we have to develop Tribi, we have to develop Finon, we have to develop all these casters, right? We have to make sure all these other Crisis heirs are developed first. And in 3.3, they had a little bit of like of breathing room, and they're like, Aglaya, we're gonna focus on Aglaya finally. And I really appreciated it because I truly felt Aglaya's character was done justice in the story patch. I would have liked for there to be more, previously, to 3.3. Um, but I did really enjoy Aglaya. I've always loved Aglaya's character, and this is the story patch that I got to see the kind of the potential really be used in her character that I saw based on the trailers. So yeah, Aglaya and Cypher's dynamics was so well done in this story patch. And I really fell in love specifically with Aglaya and her performance in this story patch as well. And as I mentioned before, the voice acting was phenomenal, just really really good. What else do I want to talk about? Let's talk about the ending. So yeah, Herda and Screwlum once again collaborating with one another was really really cool because I really like it. I really love in Star Rail when they basically very quickly expand the scope of the story by using the lore that they've built up. Like Amphorius was like so closed off, right? And Amphorius is so closed off. Nothing has changed. and it's really been limited to just the Chrysos heirs and Don Hung and the Trailblazer. But when they introduced Lygus and basically used Lygus as a vehicle to bring Herda into the story, God, I love that. I thought that was such a great storytelling decision, and they did it again this patch because even though Lygus isn't here, they bring back Herda because Herda now has a connection to the Amphorius plot, and by bringing in Herda, who else can they bring in? The other geniuses. So bringing in Skrullum here, I think is just such a it's such an effective yet powerful way to sell the stakes and gravity of the situation at hand, right? These are true geniuses, true Emanator level characters that are now in Euphorius trying to unravel the secrets of this planet. And I just really love how Star Rail has invested so much time and effort to build up, the Eon system, right? All the Eon lore, the way Eons and Emanators work, how much of a influence they have on the universe of Star Rail. Because now that they've been able to do that, they can bring in characters like Herda and Skrullum, and it immediately shifts the tone of the story, right? So this is really cool. I really enjoyed. I really thought that bringing in Herda and connecting her to Amphorius was a good storytelling decision, but also bringing in Skrullum as well, fantastic. But the big reveal in this same scene that the main cause of Amphorius seemingly is an Emperor's scepter was really really awesome. And this isn't even this is they could have left this, they could have bolded this and left this as the cliffhanger, and it would have been amazing in my opinion. Because a lot of people don't really know about Rupert. Is it Rupert or Rupert? I think it's Rupert. I think it's Rupert. A lot of Star Rail players who don't pay attention to the lore actually have no idea who the hell Rupert even is. Because there's really been not many direct mentions of Rupert within the story. Most of the Rupert lore has been introduced via um side text, divergent universe, simulated universe. It's been introduced through those parts of the game rather than the main story of Star Rail. But for those of you who know who Emperor Rupert is, you guys know how fucking insanely powerful and dangerous he was, and that anything related to him is an extreme cause for concern. And the fact that Amphorius seems to have some relationship or some connection to an Emperor Scepter is another dynamic of storytelling that I wasn't expecting, but I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I'm really excited to see what they take this. I'm gonna take another swig of tea. And now that we're at the end, I guess we could talk about a little bit more about the other, besides the Emperor's Scepter, the other kind of really dangerous and powerful threat that Amphorius is connected to, right? The Lord Ravager. So in 3.2, it was introduced to us by Lycus when they brought the Herda into Amphorius and really connected her with the storyline. It was revealed to us that the third path that Amphorius is deeply connected to, besides the remembrance and the erudition, was the destruction. And I think most of us knew that already. Because any other path I think wouldn't have made sense. Like if Lygus in 3.2 was the third path that the the world Amphorius is connected to is the hunt. Whoa, right? I would have been like, that's a bit anticlimactic, right? The only other paths that I would have been like, yo, would have been something like Enigmata, maybe finality, maybe propagation. I would have been like, holy shit. But I think most of us knew that out of the main paths that could be the third one, the one that was going to make the most sense thematically was destruction. So I was pretty much always on the train that Amphorius was connected to the remembrance, the erudition, and the destruction. How they were going to do it, I wasn't sure. But I think the way they decided to do it is really, really interesting by basically saying, hey, Amphorius is effectively they haven't outright said this, but they've implied it heavily that Amphorus is effectively a prison or a cage for a very powerful Lord Ravager. Excuse me, I had to burp there for a minute. And the Lord Ravagers, in my opinion, up until now, haven't really been uh, written or done that well within the Honkai Star Rail lore. So I'm really glad we're getting this extra focus on them in Amphorius because the main antagonistic force of Star Rail is, of course, the destruction. Nanook, the Eon of Destruction, and his followers, right? Which are the Antimatter Legion. There's a couple of other main ones as well. But the very strongest of Nanook's followers are the Lord Ravagers, the basically the generals of the destruction that command the Antimatter Legion and are, you know, commanded by Nanook to basically spread destruction throughout the galaxy. And unfortunately, for such an important and influential role slash title within the Star Rail lore and universe, the very first exposure we get to a Lord Ravager within the main Star Rail story is Fantilia. In my opinion, by far the worst antagonist we've had in the game. So listen, man, I don't know what they were thinking with the first Xianzhou storyline, in 1.0 and 1.2 and I think 1.3, I don't remember. Basically, when we go to the Xianzhou for the first time and we meet Jing Yan and Dan Heng, gets revealed as Imbiber Lune, all that stuff. To me, that is easily the worst story of Star Rail. Easily. It's not even close. In fact, I would go as far to say it's quite average or below average. I won't criticize it that much, but I think to go from how amazing Bellabog was to how mediocre the Xianzhou Lafu first storyline was, it was such like a shock for me, like such a tone shift. I was like, "What's going on here?" Um, so yeah, I'm not a big fan of the first Xianzhou storyline at all, and maybe there's a little bit of bias here, but I genuinely feel like having Fantilia be the antagonist of that storyline made it really difficult to make Fantilia compelling in any way. She she was introduced too late as an antagonist, in my opinion. She's introduced pretty well. The cutscene where she basically kills Ting Yun, I think, is pretty cool. But almost immediately after, the visual connection that we get to Fantilia is just a random boss mob. Just what? Like for a Lord Ravager? Are you kidding me? And the final fight we get with Fantilia is cool. Don't get me wrong. Her design in that fight is really visually amazing and appealing, and everything about that boss fight is awesome. But to me, a big reason that boss fight doesn't feel as impactful as it should is number one, the story leading up to it, not great. But also number two, because it's not the first time we see Fantilia, right? The first impression you get of Fantilia is a random boss. Not a random boss, a random mob. It's a random mob. And I'm just like, really, man? Long story short, wasn't a big fan of the way Lord Ravagers were introduced within the storyline of Star Rail. Because I feel like they're such pivotal characters within the Star Rail story and lore. They are, besides Nanook, the main sources of antagonist. Like, build them. They should be these monumental figures within the story, almost mythical figures. That if you're going to introduce them within the story, you should focus on them significantly. And I think Amphorus is doing it so well because I think it's pretty clear to everyone that the Lord Ravager is this motherfucker right in front of us. Phynon is almost certainly the Lord Ravager of that Amphorus is holding hostage in some way. A lot of people say that the cycle of the Flame Chase journey is basically just a perpetual cycle to keep Phynon locked in a dream. Like he is just continuously reliving the Flame Chase journey over and over again, hoping that you know, like everyone hoping that he never remembers who he is. Um, but I think they've done such a good job at building up Finon to be a Lord Ravager because he is just effectively he is the main character of Enforius. He is the main character, the main focus of this entire story. And to me, that is the level of story importance that I want in a Lord Ravager. I want them to be someone of significant value to the story. And seeing the way they've built up Finon as, not just a major character in Forest, but a major character in greater Star Rail lore and story as a Lord Ravager, potentially, because obviously unconfirmed, but I think it's pretty obvious. I think they've done such a good job. But yeah, I think Finon as the Lord Ravager and Lygus is an observer to an extent. I mean, he claims he's an observer, but he clearly has ulterior motives. And that our presence, the Trailblazers' presence within the story, as well as Cyrene's presence within the story, revolves around the fact of Finon being a Lord Ravager and potentially either healing him, right, making him stop being a Lord Ravager, or preventing him from becoming a Lord Ravager. Stopping him, right? Maybe he becomes the Lord Ravager. He's able to break free of his prison, and we have to stop him, or just simply put, understanding him and how he became a Lord Ravager and concluding his story at a later time, later down the line in Star Rail, because I don't think we're going to kill Finon here. If Finon does end up being an antagonist, I don't think his story ends here in Enforius. But yeah, I think we can. There's Lygus being mysterious and vague and everything in between. But yeah, obviously, Cyrene, I think, Cyrene number one, finally being introduced in a story, awesome. For for those of you in my imaginary audience who have, watched and experienced or played through the story of Honkai Impact the Third, you know how amazing this character being introduced in the story finally is, because she is the Elysia XP, and Elysia is one of the most important and liked characters in Impact the Third. Having her finally show up in the story is really, really cool, and having her connection to Finon be so important, I think, speaks volumes to her role in the story. We are, I think, 3.4 is probably going to be the end of part one of Amphorius. If it was up to me, this would have been the end of part one. I think the climax with Aquila was so good, and how everyone died and left Finon by himself was also so good. I would have made the end of part one of Amphorius 3.3. That way you get 4 story patches for part one, 4 story patches for part two. But it's fine. I think you can do 5 story patches for part one, 3 story patches for part two. It works either way. But finally introducing Cyrene in the story means that, okay, yeah, we're now in the end game of Amphorius. We are now going to be barreling towards the end. And I think now that Finon has come face to face with her and face to face with Lygus, we're about to get many reveals concerning who he really is, how he became the Lord Ravager, if he is one, and we'll see where it goes. I have no idea where they're going to take it. If they're going to try to redeem him in some way, if they're going to really just step into the antagonistic angle, I'm excited to see it because Finon is such a likable character. He is, I think, a fan favorite. For those of you who have seen his animations, we watched the animations leaks on stream last time at the end of the stream. Holy shit. he is a he is a character that is going to be ridiculously hyped up before his release. Like, I anticipate we're gonna get like 3 or 4. He's like a Firefly Acheron level character. You know what I mean? Like a Castros level. Like, he is an anniversary level character. Like, he's on that level. We're gonna get an animated shirt, a Myriad Celestia, maybe another trailer on top of that, and obviously the character demo. But and how do I end? How do I put a pin into this discussion? So, in summary, basically, I because of the way the lore has been set up in Star Rail. To me, the Lord Ravagers should be basically outside of the Astral Express and the Stellaron Hunters. Besides those two groups, to me, the Lord Ravagers should be priority number one in the Star Rail, basically main story. If you're going to introduce a Lord Ravager in the Star Rail main story, I think they should be pivotal. You should put lots of screen time, lots of development. You need to build them up properly. I wasn't happy with the way they did Fantilia. I'm really happy with the way they're doing it now. Especially if Finon is Lord Ravager, which I think is pretty obvious that he is. And I'm excited to see where they take it. I think they could go either way. I think they could make him like redeemed in some way. We could stop his ascension to becoming a Lord Ravager, or we could lean into it, right? We could fail to stop his ascension to a Lord Ravager and just make that, make him as a very compelling antagonist. And I'm really excited to see where they go with it. I think it works either way. So what else do I want to speak of? So we talked about Cypher, we talked about Aglaya, we talked about the Emperor's Scepter with Herda and Skrullum. We've introduced this dynamic, which is going to be such an important dynamic going forward. We talked about how amazing the Aquila boss fight was. Yeah, did we miss anything critical? We talked about the backstory with Cypher and Aglaya. We talked about the voice acting performance and how good it was. Oh, I definitely want to talk about that. I can't believe I forgot about. I also want to talk about Hyacinth. We'll probably. This was really Hyacinth's story, so we'll talk about her last. Before we talk about Hyacinth, let's talk about this plot twist. I want the right backdrop. I need to find the right visual. God damn it. We'll use that as the visual for Hyacinth. Really? I'm looking for the visual where. Hold on. I'll get there eventually. I think. Maybe. Potentially. Yeah, here we go. The plot twist that Cypher was the real MVP pretty much the whole time in Euphorius was fucking insane. Holy shit. I felt like this is a very well written and truly surprising plot twist. So we get introduced to Cypher's power, I think, before this. The fact that she is effectively because of her divinity as demigod of trickery, she's effectively able to manipulate reality by telling lies. She's able to basically convince other people through her lies into believing reality is something else, effectively, including herself. And what she did is she went in to try to steal. I believe it was implied to be this really valuable and priceless gem of some sort. I think it was also implied to potentially have been the core flame. But effectively she goes into the basically the vault that is being guarded by the Council of Elders in Enforis to try to steal it. And while she's there, she starts interacting with this old man who seems to be the main, I guess, keeper of the stuff. I don't quite remember this all that well, so let's go back. I don't want to speak out of my ass here. Yeah, the chop lane. He had a different name, but effectively, this person that she's speaking with is, the way I understood it, the head of the Council of Elders, the people who were safeguarding maybe the core flame or this whatever this gemstone was, and that gemstone / core flame was being used to power the device that Kefli is holding up in the sky that grants Enforis the protection of the day, right? Enforis has always had a never-ending day. There's no night in Enforis because of that device that Kefli has. There's a specific name to it that I always forget. But it is revealed here in this conversation between this old man who is dying and Cypher, who effectively pretends, using her power, to be the disciple of the old man. She lies to the old man and pretends to be the disciple, and she learns that the device that Kefali has is going to last only 300 years, as opposed to um 1,000. I think is what the Council of Elders and this old man told the people of Emphorius. So basically, the Council of Elders and the dying Chopline here, they told everyone that, hey, we're good for 1,000 years, or if it wasn't 1,000 years, it was an indefinite period of time. Don't worry, we will be protected by Kefli forever. And it's revealed here that no, that was not the case. We only had 300 years. And once those 300 years are up, Kefli's protection will die, and the Black Tide will have basically free reign to invade Aqua. And everyone at that point will basically die. So what Cypher does after learning of this information through her, trickery, she realizes that the only way for Amphorius to survive is, with Kefli's protection. Without Kefli's protection, then the Black Tide will invade and overtake Akama and Amphorius before the Chrysos heirs are able to complete their mission. They need time, basically. And what she does is she uses her power, the aforementioned power that we discussed, to be able to manipulate reality through her lies to basically tell the people of Akama and the people of Amphorius a lie. She tells them that Kefli's protection, the Dawn device, yes, the Dawn device, will safeguard Akama forever. And by telling this lie, in combination with her power, she's able to manipulate reality to where Kefli and the Dawn device they're able to keep up the protection past the 300 years. The 300 years end, but the protection is still there because of Cypher's lie. So what effectively Cypher has done is she's replaced the Dawn device. She's replaced Kefli and the Dawn device as the true source of light that safeguards Akama. Because if she dies and her lie dies, then everything goes to shit because the protection fades. And that's the reason she leaves Aglaya and the Chrysos heirs, is because if she were to stay in Akama and continue the flame chase journey with Aglaya and everyone else, eventually, especially Aglaya, would be able to determine that Cypher was lying about the Dawn device being functionally active forever. And as soon as that lie were to be exposed, it's not effective anymore. The Dawn devices would shut off. And so she left. She basically sacrificed her, a good life with the people that she loved and cared for in order to protect them. What a reveal. What a plot twist. Genuinely a really nice plot twist. I really feel that there's no plot holes here. I feel that it does a lot for Cypher's character. It does a lot for Cypher's relationship and dynamic with Aglaya and the rest of the Chrysos heirs. And it makes her sacrifice later to the hands of the Flame Reaver that much more meaningful. Because basically, the moment she dies, the Dawn device goes to shit. You see, the moment Cypher dies, this is what should have happened. After the 300 years were up, the Dawn device should have failed, and the Black Tide would start invading immediately. The world would basically reach the apocalypse. So what a plot twist! Genuinely, I thought that was some really smart writing, and I really thought it did a lot for Cypher's character, and it was a really effective way to add even more impact to her death. So, well done. And I am getting a bit tired here, so I think we're going to end the discussion with probably the standout character of the story, besides Finon, because I think most people would agree that this was the start of Finon being the focus of Euphorius. Let me find a good screenshot for her. We have to have a good screenshot for her. Here we go. What an absolute girl boss. Holy shit. I I will be the first to say I apologize, Hyacinth. Because here's been my journey with this character, right? Barbara in Genshin Impact. And stay with me here. Stay with me here. From the moment I started playing Genshin, Barbara in Genshin Impact was always one of my favorite characters. In fact, I would go as far to say that when I started playing Genshin, she might have been like top 5 favorite characters in all of Genshin, maybe even top 3. And I always had this like almost attachment to my love for Barbara almost. And if obviously as I continued to play Genshin and more characters got introduced and I got access to other characters, new healers, new whatever, she started to phase away. But I always had this almost like attachment to the character because of how much I loved her and how much, it also felt that I was one of the few people who did really like Barbara as well. So there was like a little bit of pride in it as well. So when Hyacinth was first introduced to us in the Star Rail story, and I got to see her for the first time and realize that she was basically just a Barbara XP, I fell in love with this character from a design perspective. Immediately. Immediately, I fell in love with Hyacinth from a design perspective. I was like, she's a Barbara XP. Holy shit. I was so excited. I was like, we're finally getting some Barbara love after all this time. And Barbara has gotten some focus as Genshin has gone on. Don't get me wrong. But it was really nice to see a character in Star Rail that was an XP of one of my favorite Genshin characters that I had an attachment to. Unfortunately, I that was where I thought at first the extent of my love for Hyacinth would go. I fully expected Hyacinth to be a good character, but a character that I was mostly only going to like because of her design and the surface level stuff that we saw when she was introduced in the story in 3.1. And things she got a little bit of development. She had obviously she was a part of some of the events that we had in Forest, and I was able to have a good time with some of the dialogue there with her, and some of the stuff that we got with her at 3.1 and 3.2 was also really nice and well done. But coming into 3.3, I had high expectations because I thought to myself, okay, so kind of like the opposite with Aglaia. With Aglaia, I was sad that because I thought that there wasn't going to be any, potential character development for her, that we had lost a chance to really expand on her character. With Hyacinth, I was almost expecting and really hoping that 3.3 would do a lot for her character for me. Because I felt that if they were going to do anything for Hyacinth's character, it was going to be now. I didn't think they could do anything after 3.3, and they hadn't done anything before 3.3. So I was like, okay, if they want to make Hyacinth a genuine character with depth and motivations and writing and backstory, this was it. This is the moment, right? So when I started playing 3.3, I was like, look, Hyacinth, I love you. I love your design. You're a Barbara XP. Please have a good character performance within the story. And man, did she ever. Holy shit. I was honestly expecting the 3.3 story to focus almost exclusively on Finan. I thought this is going to be, it may be Finan and Cyphera. I was like, this is going to be a Finan story and a Cyphera story, and Hyacinth is going to get the short end of the stick. And thank God that wasn't the case. Hyacinth is so great in this story. She doesn't get like, she honestly doesn't really develop all that much. She does, don't get me wrong. She's more of a, in my opinion, a static character in a great way. We really get her motivations in this kind of flashback scene with her, Anaxa, and Casterus. It's the flashback scene that we were looking at earlier when I had to click back on the video. Yeah, here we go. When we were listening to Casterus giggling. This scene is the first scene that I think really sets Hyacinth's motivations and goals directly in front of the player. And the way and it's a pretty simple way to introduce said motivations, but I think it's really effective. I think it does a good job at kind of laying out how strongly she believes in these motivations and her beliefs. She effectively wants to be someone who watches out for the little guy. She wants to kind of heal and support and tell the stories of not the heroes on the flame chase journey or the legends that you hear, in Forest, but she wants to tell, and bring stories and bring focus to the common people of Forest, the everyday people of Forest. She wants to heal them and support them and listen to them and, live on to tell their tale. And, I think that's a very genuine and sincere goal to have. And it really endeared me to her character. And seeing her, basically after Aglaya's death, realize that, okay, this is it. The final step in this journey is one where I need to take, you know, the main responsibility to execute this mission. She goes with Finon and the Trailblazers to Aquila. She knows what she's getting into, and she takes it in stride, right? She's throughout this entire story, she's kind, optimistic, mature, calm, composed, collected, steady. Like Finon is very obviously within the story, really stepping into his own as a leader, right? But he's also very emotional, right? He's very much leaning into, the feelings that he has within his heart. And Castris is doing so as well, but she's doing it in a different way. She's almost taking her feelings and emotions, and as opposed to Finon, who's basically who I see that as Finon to me is using his emotions and feelings as almost fuel. He's like burning through his emotions and feelings to have these big outbursts of strength and power and leadership, right? Whereas Hyacinth to me is kind of using her feelings and emotions throughout the story to almost like temper her resolve, to almost kind of harden, her values and beliefs and be that much more resolute. And I think it's very subtle, but I also think it's really effective. And the way she gains the respect of Solibus, I think, is a very underrated part of the story. Remember, when Solibus is first introduced in the Sky Fortress, he's pretty like disrespectful towards Hyacinth. He doesn't really see her as kind of like a worthy descendant of the Sky People, the Sky Folk. And by the end of the of their mission and journey through the Sky Fortress and their boss against Aquila, Solibus has fully, changed his tune. He respects Hyacinth. He fights for her. He recognized how strong and resolute she is. And seeing her performance in the boss fight, I think, is just so amazing. Because she didn't even need to pop off like this, in my opinion. I mean, we can watch it one more time. Why not? It'll probably be like somewhere here. We can fast forward. Well, we'll put the volume on. Like this moment right here. Like the way like she activates the core flame, right? Immediately recognizes what the power that she has in her hand. And Finon, obviously, this is a big moment for Finon as well, of course. But I think as awesome as Finon is in this moment, Hyacinth is equally as awesome. This scene right here where she's like controlling the power of the core flame and then later just explodes with it to heal all of her allies. I mean, visually it's a spectacle as well. And then you get this scene right here where, the Trailblazers and Finon are going to deal the finishing blow to Aquila. And Hyacinth just basically takes Ika and the core flame, combines them into two, and then just Kamehameha's her. That's just she just used the Kamehameha against Aquila. Like you would not expect that from her character at all, and it is it isn't what makes it so powerful is that even without this scene right here, I felt that her character had was already amazing within the story. She had been so strong, so hopeful throughout all of this, and had taken everything in stride. I think she is such a compelling character, such a likable character. I think that's really the word that I'm looking for. Those are the words that I'm looking for. Compelling and likable. And sometimes you don't need a character like Finon. Sometimes you don't need a character like Mighty or Cyphera. You know, these characters that have deep flaws that they work through and develop, right? Sometimes you do need a character like Hyacinth, a character who understands her strengths and weaknesses, who understands and has come to terms with you know, who she is as a person and knows well her beliefs and values and does her best to, you know, pursue those beliefs and values in her own way. And later, you know, gets the moment to shine and really kind of make her presence, you know, felt within the story. It just if Hyacinth to me felt like such a breath of fresh air in Euphorius, and I really have fallen in love with the character. It's been so hard to resist summoning for her, so hard to resist summoning for her because I truly do love uh Hyacinth. I love her design. I love her character. I love how likable she is. Just everything about Hyacinth, I really, really love. And obviously, the you know icing on top of the cake. I think I skipped past it. Is her sacrifice to protect the people of Amphorius, to protect her friends, right? To protect Finon and the Trailblazer and Don Hong. How immediately after Cypher's death and the world basically descending into the apocalypse, she recognizes that the only way to protect as many lives as possible, but more importantly, protect Finon so that he can get to the vortex of Genesis to reshape the world, is to, you know, sacrifice her life and to become the new Titan of the Sky, to become the new Aquila, and to use her newfound powers to protect everyone. And this is such a powerful moment because she does not hesitate. There is no hesitation. She understands immediately what she has to do. And, you know, she's like, all right, I have to do it. Don Hung, please make a path for me to the Vortex of Genesis. I'm going to go and I'm going to do what I have to do. And her farewell, I think, is really powerful as well. And also, let me say this. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but I've seen a couple of people point this out, and I would like to bring attention to it as well. Hyacinth and Don Hung is such a great character dynamic. They really started with it in 3.2 when the two go to Anaxa's laboratory at the Grove of Epiphany. That's really where the dynamic starts. But they expanded on the dynamic in this story here, and I thought it was really sweet. Whether or not you ship Don Hung with Hyacinth, whatever, right? Because I know a lot of people ship him with March. A lot of people ship him with like Blade and Jingwen as well. Whoever you ship Don Hung with, I don't care. You know, if you ship Don Hung with Hyacinth, awesome, right? I personally don't know who I ship Don Hung with, but I think regardless, Hyacinth and Don Hung have such a sweet relationship. They clearly care about one another, even if it's not outspoken directly. And you can kind of tell that Don Hung felt the deepest connection with Hyacinth out of everyone they had met in Euphorius. Because most of the Crisis heirs develop a relationship with the Trailblazer, right? With Kalis Sashtel, right? Finon really is more inclined towards the Trailblazer. So is Castris, Aglaya as well. And Don Hung was always there, right? He was always a part of the, you know, the Trailblazer faction within Euphorius alongside you, the main character. But it always felt like he was like on the side. But Hyacinth was the, you know, first and really only, I think, Euphorius character who I felt was more deeply connected to Don Hung. And I really liked their dynamic. I thought it was really cute. I thought it was very sweet. I thought they were very supportive of one another and that they had a lot of natural chemistry. And I really appreciated that Hyacinth in her farewell, you know, well, not Hyacinth, but in Hyacinth's farewell, Don Hung gets a line. Like he gets like a very specific line. I forget what it is. Yeah, like he references something that the two had discussed before. Like he acknowledges he basically, this is Don Hong acknowledging that he listened to Hyacinth, that he remembers their conversations, that he cared about her and wanted the best for her, and that he's sad to see her go. And I think it's such a perfect ending to her character. And out of all the characters that I hope come back, because I do think we're gonna get eventually um all the characters back. I would be very surprised if Amphorius keeps the deaths of all these characters. I think by the end of Amphorius, we will have all the Crisis heirs revived in some way, shape, or form. Who knows how it looks like, but they will all be back effectively, except maybe Finon, right? Because of he's Finon, the Lord Ravager. And I honestly think out of all the Crisis heirs that I want to see back, Hyacinth is the one I most want to see back. I just want the best for Hyacinth, effectively, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, what a story patch! Truly amazing story patch. So many characters had such amazing performances in this patch, not just like from a voice acting perspective, but from like a writing perspective as well. I mean, Finon obviously was probably the star of the show, but Hyacinth probably second right behind him. Also, just amazing the way we talked about, and Cipher. The plot twist with her being the real MVP of Amphorius, and then Aglaya, her backstory, the flashbacks that we got with her and Cipher, the first time that she showed vulnerability, just really, really strong stuff all around, all across the board. And you know, the way the lore played into it all with Herda and Skrillum arriving on Amphorius, the mystery of it all with who the fuck Lygus is, what is the cycle, who is the Flame Reaver, right? What's going to happen to Finon? Cyrene is now in the story, right? What's going to happen? Just phenomenal stuff. It truly is, I think, the best story patch since Penacony 2.2. And a lot of people have said that it is the best story patch in the game. And honestly, if you believe that, I have no reason to argue with you because it is that good. It is that good. But okay, we're going to go ahead and stop there. I think to me, that felt really nice. It felt really fun instead of just going through chronologically and just recapping everything that happens. It kind of felt like I was really able to say what I wanted to say and say it sooner and focus on the important aspects of the story and the story patch itself. So let's go ahead and end it. All right. So, like I said at the beginning of the stream, tomorrow we will be back. We will be streaming pretty late at night because we'll have to wait for when Zenless Zone Zero drops their patch. So usually they drop it anywhere from like 9 to 11. Usually they say it's like 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, but sometimes they do it early, sometimes they do it late. So we'll see on when they drop the story patch. But as soon as the story patch drops, you can expect me to start streaming fairly soon after. We will summon for Yishuan. Hopefully we get lucky. Fingers crossed. And yeah, I will see you guys all then tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was an absolute joy to talk about 3.4, 3.3, and I'm really excited for 3.4. That's going to be coming here in a couple of weeks. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace late. Have a good night.